Hi, this is Steve at Office365Mon.com, and today we're going to look at monitoring large lists in SharePoint Online. So to begin with, we go up here to the Configure menu and we select List Monitoring. The reason why we added this feature to monitor list is that historically with SharePoint on-premises, there have been many customers that have had issues with the performance of their list in their SharePoint farm. And there are lots of reasons for that, but usually it's around how big the lists get and then what the performance becomes like when rendering the views for those lists. And so as more customers are moving their content from SharePoint on-premises farm to SharePoint Online, we decided to add a feature where you could actually monitor the various lists that you have in your site. So that way you're able to stay on top of any potential performance issues that may come up from the lists in your site. The reason why we do that is because a lot of the content in SharePoint Online can come from your list. So for example, if you have, pages in your site where the content from those pages is coming from a large list and the performance of that list is slow, then to your end users it's going to look like, those pages are slow, or more likely the whole site is slow. In addition to that, there's a lot of developers that use SharePoint List as a data source for their application. So again, if the list performance is bad, then people are going to think that the application is written poorly or the application is just not performing well. So by being able to monitor the performance of these large lists, you can stay on top of those things before they become a big issue. So to begin with, on the configure Office list monitoring, Office 365 list monitoring, you'll see on top here the various lists that are being monitored for this subscription. Before we get started on the lists we select, though, we're going to go down here to where we configure the list monitoring. And you can see it's quite simple. To begin with, we can set up a notification for when it takes longer than X number of seconds to render the default view for a monitored list. So you can decide based on the lists that you have and how you're using them in your site, how long is too long before you want to know what's going on with rendering the views for a particular list. So in this case, we have it set to 60, but you can obviously set it to however many seconds you want. And then if it takes, in this case, longer than 60 seconds to render the default view for a monitored list, then we'll go ahead and we'll send out a notification. And again, at Office 365 Mon, a notification means we'll send out an email to any email addresses you have configured with us, a text message to any phone numbers you have set up with us, as well as a webhook if you have that configured with us. So we'll send out a chunk of data to a webhook address to let you know that the rendering, the default view for any of these monitored lists has taken longer than the time that you set it up for. In addition to that, in SharePoint, historically, 5,000 has been kind of a magic number for a list. So there's a lot of guidance that says you either, shouldn't have more than 5,000 items in a list, or if you do, you should configure views and filtering so that any particular view doesn't have more than 5,000 items in it. So again, we set this up so depending on what your circumstances are, what views and filters you have set up, and how you're using it, you can set whatever threshold you want for us to monitor you. And then in this case, when the lists we're monitoring, if they exceed 4,800 items, then we'll go ahead and we'll send out notifications. And again, you can set this to whatever makes sense. It could be 5,000, it could be 25,000, but you can set it up to whatever you want. Once you've set these two values, and all you have to do is just click the update button, that goes ahead and that will update your list monitoring configuration. Once you've done that, then you can go ahead and select the actual list that you want us to monitor for you. So then again, up here, we have a collection of all the lists that are in this particular SharePoint Online site that's being monitored for you. You'll see for each list, we have the name of the list and the number of items in parentheses that that list has. So for example, we may say, we really don't want to monitor the products list, so all we need to do is uncheck that, and we'll no longer be monitoring that list. Or conversely, if we say, the products list is getting pretty big, we want to monitor that. To set up monitoring for that, all you have to do is check the box, and that's it. You're good to go. And then from that point, we'll start monitoring that list. That'll happen on a regular basis, just like it does in the way that we monitor your SharePoint Online site or Exchange Online mailbox. Every minute or two, we'll do the same sort of thing with your large list as well. Once that's set up, we'll start the monitoring and we'll start creating reports for you. So if we go up here into our advanced reports, one of the things where you'll see this data first show up is in this existing average response time report. So if we go ahead and click on that, that's going to show you the performance of the recent probes that we've issued against all of these resources that we're monitoring for you. Now, to make it easier to find these large lists, we'll go ahead and we'll uncheck some of these other items that were being monitored right now. And you'll see the sales contracts, the help files, and the products. Those are the three lists that we're monitoring in our SharePoint Online site. And as you saw me do there, I can just uncheck these other items if I want to focus only on these other specific pieces, these other resources that we're monitoring. So we can see overall, the list rendering performance is pretty good. We have a little peak there, but overall it's performing pretty well. In addition to that, we can go over here and we can look at things like the monitored list performance. Monitored list performance will show you how long it's taking on average to render those lists over time over the last month. And so you can see the performance, how that's going. If you see any trends there, then you can take the appropriate steps to remedy that. And then in addition to that, we also have the monitored list size. So if we go down and look at that, this is a snapshot, a daily view snapshot. It will show you the last 30 to 45 days or so of that list size, and you can see any trends that are happening. In this case, we can see a slow but fairly steady growth in the size of our list. And then finally, you can also get the longer term view, which is in the monthly monitored list size. So again, you can see trends as they're occurring over time. We can see there's steady growth in each of these lists, and so that can give you the information you need to go ahead and start planning some alternative action, whether that's creating separate lists, creating new views for these lists, adding filtering or indexes to these lists, all of those different ways that you can remediate large list performance issues. And that's how the list monitoring feature works at Office365Mon.com.